Hey everyone, welcome back to Integrative Psychonautics. I hope you've been doing well out there. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a 5-step model, a 5-step structure that I've developed for doing psychedelic sessions to increase safety, to kind of reduce harm, and overall to set yourself up for a better experience. This is a bit of an iteration on the basic 3-stage model of psychedelic therapy or psychedelic work, where you kind of have prep, journey, and then integration afterwards. I wanted to expand upon that and kind of clarify how I see this all working in a bit more detail. So if you're interested in understanding how to save yourself overwhelm, grief, underpreparedness, and you want to have the best experience possible, watch on. It's so nice to be back here making videos for you guys again. So before we go ahead and get into the 5 steps, I wanted to just take a moment and kind of get caught up with you guys, just kind of fill you in with what's going on in my world, share a bit about what I'm doing, how I'm doing, and perhaps use myself as a bit of a teaching example here. So as you've noticed, if you're a follower of the channel or just, someone who occasionally touches base, I have not been making videos for about 2 weeks now. And I wanted to just acknowledge that here on the channel, kind of give you a little bit of a reason why, and perhaps a bit of an explanation. So long story short, I haven't been making videos for a couple different reasons. One major reason is that in the background, I've been working with more clients, and I've been also, when I'm not working with clients, working a lot on a video course that I'll be offering for you guys shortly that will be essentially a guided course for you to do a guided psilocybin session at home whenever you want to by following along with our pre-recorded audio. But there's going to be a bunch of preparational exercises you can do, integration exercises you can do, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where a lot of my time and attention has been, as has been a lot with my clients. And then also, if I'm going to be honest with you, I've been just kind of out of sorts physically because it's been incredibly hot where I live here in the Southwest. And I've been kind of just moving through my own personal funk and emergent stuff as occasionally comes up as a human being. And so I wanted to name this and share this with you just to say that, as a coach, today is one of these days where I quite frankly don't want to be making this video. I would much rather be kind of taking a nap. I'm a bit tired. I'm underslept. I've got hell neighbors right now with their dogs. It's nearly 110 degrees out, and we don't have AC in the house here. And my overall health has been a bit wonky. And so long story short, I'm not feeling great. I'm not at my optimal right now. Now, given that I have already, not been making videos and not uploading for you guys for 2 weeks, it would be very easy for me, of course, to rationalize, well, what's one more day, kind of take another health day, take another self-care day, as I've been doing along the way over these last 2 weeks. But I wanted to just kind of lean in instead of, being casual about it and, reconnect with you guys and make a really good video here and do something that is productive and that is more in alignment with my values of communicating with you as an audience, sharing my message, building my business, adding benefit to the world in this topic of psychedelics, living in alignment with my values rather than simply kind of drifting through another day of discomfort. So I wanted to just kind of say all this to say that, I have my off days too. It's okay to take periods out for mental health and self-care and self-nourishment and, take breaks away from leaning into difficult things. And I also wanted to just kind of mention here and, make explicit that even when I'm having hard days, I still show up here behind the camera to record for you guys and put in the work myself. So I wanted to just kind of say this to say that I live by these principles that I, know work because I've applied them in my own life before, and that I offer to clients. So, in moments it may seem like, I as a coach, I'm kind of just like dispensing advice or insight, but I seem a little maybe like I'm not following my own advice. But I just want to be clear here that, I do these same difficult things as well. And even though sometimes you're like, I don't want to do the thing, but I know it's going to, grow me or help me or improve my situation. And, if I, as a coach, am giving you the message to do those things, I want you to remember that I struggle with this too sometimes, and yet I turn around and do it. So, health breaks, good. Self-care, good. I'm really happy I took the time out that I did. And also leaning into doing the difficult thing, also good. And so here we are. So with all that being said, enough about me, enough about what's going on in my life, enough about the course. I'm excited to share about it, but I'll be sharing about that more in new videos coming up soon. So let's get down to what I really wanted to talk to you about today, which is this kind of upgraded model of understanding psychedelic sessions and how to do psychedelic sessions safely. So let's get into it. Okay, so let me just set the scene here a little bit and create a little context as to why I made this. Okay, so you may be familiar with kind of the three-stage or the three-step model of psychedelic sessions that seems to have emerged around the psychedelic therapy world over the last 10, 15 years, right? Especially in the last 5, 6 years, we've seen this kind of three-step model emerge. And as far as I know, this model, which is essentially preparation, doing the session, and integration, is roughly designed to be a model for how to do psychedelic therapy. I think it's also intended to be roughly a model of harm reduction and how to generally use psychedelics in a more safe way. And it's kind of become a meme. It's kind of become the default understanding of how to run a psychedelic session or set of sessions. And as far as I know, I don't know of any place where this was formally articulated as the way to do it. It's just kind of become this consensus, implied, emergent understanding of, okay, this is how you do psychedelic sessions. You do a prep, you do the session, of course, because without that, there's no psychedelic session. Then you do the integration, right? And a lot of emphasis has been put on this buzzword of integration and what that means. I'll certainly be talking about that more. I've got videos on the way about that. But this three-step model, when I really look at it, and I look at communicating this to you in a more coherent, clear way. And when I look at the kinds of questions I get from people in my DMs or clients, people I'm working with to help prepare and working with through psychedelic sessions, what's come up is that I don't think that this kind of three-stage model quite accurately captures how we should be thinking about this process. So as I've been building this video course that I've been building so that you can do a guided session on your own, it's really occurred to me that we actually need to get more specific about certain parts of these phases. And what emerged was something more like 5 steps. So I want to explain those 5 steps to you today as I understand them. This is also kind of emergent information. So this is based on my own experience, 30 years of taking psychedelics recreationally and therapeutically. This is based on supporting people through the processes and the different types of information and needs and experiences that have emerged. And this is just kind of what I'm observing. So hopefully this way of organizing and understanding around psychedelic work makes a little more sense, is a little more useful. I realize that when we're looking at 5 steps instead of 3, it might seem slightly more complicated, but hopefully it's all fairly intuitive and pretty straightforward and makes a lot of sense. So with that context out of the way, let's go ahead and move into understanding what these 5 steps are. So let's start with step 1. So essentially what I've done here is split up this 3-step model into 5 steps by splitting the preparation phase and the integration phase into 2 steps apiece. So we split preparation into 2 steps. And so step 1 is kind of the first half of the 2 parts of preparation. And in my mind, there really are 2 very distinct conversations and mindsets and sets of things to be thinking about in the preparation phase, which is why I split this up into 2. So the first step we could call maybe more directly what I would call preparation. Okay. And so in this first step or this first preparation phase, we can think of this as the psychological, mental, emotional part of preparation, or the nervous system part of preparation. So this is things like, yes, developing an intention or a focus, This is things like getting yourself into the right mindset, the right headspace of humility, curiosity, openness. So this is about attitudes. This is about the software of your mind, the software of your emotions. This is about, tracking, what's going on in your life in the background. What are the themes of your life currently in the moment that are kind of up for you? What's the stuff that's happened over the last year, a couple of years that might be in the background that might need processing? This is looking at essentially the set of set and setting, right? So this is your mindset. This is, how are you feeling about your relationships? How are you feeling in a relationship to yourself? How are you feeling in relationship to whatever it is you might want to heal or look at if you're doing therapeutic work? This is, overall working with getting that side of things lined up, right? So getting your mindset in the right place, making sure you're not desperate and you're impulsively running to the psychedelics to do them, making sure that you have a clear understanding of how therapy works and how psychological healing works, making sure that you have a good dialogue with your therapist. Therapeutic work would fall under this first step of preparation. So, maybe doing a bunch of sessions of therapy before you really line yourself up for the psychedelic experience. Other stuff in this first phase that I think of would be working with nervous system stuff, nervous system capacity, like working with somatic tracking, learning how to really tune in to what's going on in your body in the moment, and paying attention to how emotions manifest as body sensations. So if you've been sad lately, tuning into, well, what does sad feel like in the body, and learning how to sit with sadness as body sensations, right? So that might be one thing. Another thing might be learning how to observe what's happening inside of yourself without reacting to it, right? Learning how to be an impartial, this is what's called unblending, observer, where you can kind of witness and be attuned to your emotions and your thoughts and your overall experience, and notice different aspects of your experience without trying to fix it, without trying to change it, without trying to run away from it, any of this kind of thing, but simply getting into this safe, comfortable observer mode with yourself and really tuning into yourself, right? So this is another skill. You might want to, spend a few weeks meditating and developing that skill, right? So this would all be part of prep, in my opinion. There are other, skills there, like learning how to get more immersion, more absorption into a state. So let's say you are having really profoundly positive emotion or a positive state, learning how to allow yourself to get absorbed into that positive state. Another very important skill that's really tied closely with this idea of letting go or surrendering or opening up to the experience. So these are all things that I might stretch out over a longer period of time and really work at. So I'd work at maybe journaling, maybe just getting my attitude in the right place of humility, curiosity. I remember when I was getting ready for my first round of ayahuasca sessions, there was very much this, this thing of doing the diet, the dieta, but also preparing to humble myself psychologically and spiritually before this very powerful experience, right? Moving towards it. And as I got closer to it over the 10 days of preparation, with this sense of humility, this sense of curiosity, this sense of I'm engaging a teaching presence of some sort, whether that's my own psyche or the medicine, however you want to think of that, and really starting to line myself up psychologically in a particular way to really get the most out of that experience. So when I'm talking preparation and set, this is what I think of first. And if this needs to last 3 days, cool, I would say that's a minimum, but really this might be 3 months of prep. I would do as much dialing in of my set as I need to really feel ready to do the medicine. Okay, so that's step number one. So you may be wondering, okay, if step number one is preparation, then what's step number two? In perhaps the kind of 3-step model, this would also be part of preparation, but I really think it's a separate topic. It's a separate subject that deserves an equal amount of attention and intentionality and thoughtfulness and focus around it, which is what I would call logistics. right? So we're distinguishing the set, the mental emotional preparation from logistics, and this would be things like, should you have a trip sitter? Who is your trip sitter? What day of the week are you taking the medicine? Where are you taking it? How safe does this setting feel? How let me see what else. What's the dose? What's the medicine you're going to take? At what time? Is there going to be therapy involved during the session? Is there going to be a therapist, showing up at the end of the session to do work with you afterwards? Is there going to be, what are the particulars of how the container will be built for the session? Is there going to be music? Is it going to be internal with eye shades? Is it not? Is it going to be a recreational experience or a therapeutic experience? Looking at things like, medications that you might need to wean off of, or, what's the risk factor there? What are all the particulars? What are all the specific logistics that you need to handle of the experience that really are much more practical? They're not really about how do you feel, what's your mindset, what's your emotional state, where are you coming from, how ready are you for this? It's much more about how do we line up a situation that's going to be really good and really work and be really functional and feel as safe and doable as possible, right? So it's very much about setting, right? So we've really got set, and then we've got setting in the kind of old school sense here. And I think these really are the two phases of preparation here. And so, sure, you could say, well, yeah, this is a known thing, set and setting. Yeah, we know this is all part of prep. I really think it's useful to separate these out, though, and to really think of them as two separate steps of your process. You've got to figure out the logistics, but you've also got to work on your kind of mental, emotional preparedness for an intense, powerful experience. And I don't think those are the same thing. I don't think you should conflate or overlap them too much, because they really are distinct sets of effort and attention. So that's step number 2 would be what I call logistics, but you might also think of as setting, or just in general, kind of the more practical side of the preparation. And then on to step 3, which assuming that step 1 and step 2 were handled properly and done really well, which is kind of a big thing in and of itself, to be honest. I think preparation is kind of under discussed and under emphasized in psychedelic therapy or psychedelic work, however you want to think of this. Step 3 obviously is going to be the journey, right? And so the journey, if everything else has been handled, should be pretty straightforward. It's journey time, it's journey day. You're going to be in the place where you're going to do the journey. You're going to be with the people or by yourself, however you have it set up. You're going to take whatever the medicine is at the proper dose, at approximately the proper time. And you're going to have the journey that more or less you've set up. Obviously, journeys are always a unique, no two are the same type experience. Sometimes you really intend for it to go one way and they go another way. I think it's also really important to say that this model is inclusive of both recreational use and of therapeutic use. So that's a big difference. Are you doing a journey where you're going to be, turning on your favorite music and dancing around your house and, hanging out in the garden and, doing yoga and, rolling around and laughing with your best friend or something like that? Or is this a situation where you're, going to be internal and, having spiritual experience? Or is this a situation where you're going to be working with a therapist on the medicine and actually doing therapeutic work on the medicine, which sometimes is done, sometimes isn't done? And so the journey is what it is. And, I think what we can say about journeys that's kind of accurate, broadly speaking, is that they are self-revealing, self-unfolding, emergent experiences where, where what needs to happen is generally what tends to happen. Sometimes we expect to have an awesome time and it ends up being a more challenging time. Sometimes you expect to be having a really challenging time. What ends up happening is we actually have a really positive, amazing, beautiful time. But generally speaking, if we put everything in place with good logistics and good preparation, we should feel mentally and emotionally ready to have, whatever experience unfolds. And we should have kind of a safe container in which that can happen, where we know we are looked after, protected, cared about, and really taken care of. So Step 3 is to do the medicine and do the journey. I would say, generally speaking, in order to have the safe and best experience possible with your journey, you want to strike a nice balance of following what you've already laid out and agreed to, especially if there's a sitter involved, or friends involved, or a therapist involved, and it's more of an engaged experience. With that being said, sometimes it's going to be what it's going to be, and I think the other side of the balance there is being permissive and allowing and open-minded to what unfolds and what emerges, right? So, sometimes we plan for things to go one way, and then the day of the journey, lo and behold, the logistics change for some reason, right? And maybe that means canceling the journey altogether, or maybe that means that, you're planning a one-on-one with a buddy and they bring a friend, right? And all of a sudden it's a trio and there's a renegotiation there, that kind of thing, right? Sometimes that might mean, being adaptive in the sense, again, that like you're planning on having a fun experience and it ends up being a little more emotional work, and you don't know why, but you're a bit rattled on the inside, and there's some sort of deep discomfort or alarmedness or anxiety or fear or sadness or grief or whatever that kind of bubbles up through you, right? That's very normal. Or the other way around, you're really planning on having some heavy duty therapy, done on the psychedelic, and you end up just like having a laughing fit the whole time. And so I think part of skillful journey work involves working with what emerges in a permissive way, but also trying to really connect that into what you've kind of already laid out, if possible, right? So, and obviously if we're talking recreational, that might be a little more permissive. If we're talking therapeutic, that might be tending a little bit more towards what you had already intended, although that really depends on what emerges and, the style of therapy being done, if therapy is being done in the session or if not, right? So there's a lot more we could say about the quality of kind of working with the emergent, unfolding unpredictability of the psychedelic space itself. And if you're interested in that, do let me know, leave a comment down below, and I'd be happy to kind of put that on the roster of more videos to do. But I think in general, all things going according to plan, the journey is the journey, as you expect. There's an element of chaos and unpredictability, but if you're familiar with psychedelics, you also kind of know what to expect. So that's that. For step 4, we move into the post-journey phase, or what some people would call the integration phase, what I like to term as the aftercare phase. So I think there are a whole kind of set of, processes and tools and things we can do as part of this broader umbrella term of aftercare. And I don't think integration is quite the appropriate word to use here. So for me, I kind of divvy up the aftercare phase into roughly two different steps here, right? So the first one would generally be what I call aftercare, right? Which is more focused on helping you ground and restore yourself to, let's say, your standard functioning or upgraded but stable functioning after the experiences. So it's more about stabilization, nurturing, grounding, maybe some meaning making, maybe some reflecting on just some of the key points of what you experienced. And then from there, then we move in step 5, which I'll explain in a moment here, into integration. So let me explain a little bit about what I mean with aftercare as some examples, and then we'll talk integration. We'll talk about why I make the distinction here, and hopefully it'll make more sense, because I'm not a big fan, as I hope I'm making clear here, of this idea of integration kind of being this umbrella term for all aftercare. I think it really does a disservice and paints a distorted picture of understanding these different processes. So in aftercare, I pretty much consider the aftercare phase to be starting somewhere as you're in the middle to towards the end of coming down off the medicine. So aftercare really begins while you're still kind of with the medicine, and as you're kind of returning into your, let's say, your identity structure, your default mode of functioning, perhaps returning back to your body if you had kind of a transcendent out-of-body experience, returning back to resonance and identification with and comfort with the physical, right? That's essentially when aftercare begins. And aftercare can really stretch, if we're going to be honest here, for a week, days, a week, perhaps a month, or even a few months, right? It really depends on how much is needed on the tail end after the experience that's unfolded for you. But I think we can think of things like having a nice, nourishing, grounding meal after your journey. We can think of things like just taking care of the body, right? So this would be maybe a walk, maybe stretching, maybe taking a shower or a bath. This might be things like, just generally grounding, getting back into the body, back into feeling embodied, feeling in touch with the physical, feeling in touch with the simple beauty of physical life here on earth around us, right? This would also include, so that's part of what I think of as aftercare, as a bare minimum. Sometimes we really get our bell rung, right? We're so far out in some cosmic experience. We are so, immersed in the all one, or we're having some weird encounter with aliens, or we are having some sort of weird existential journey, or some hero's journey through the depths of our psyche, or we are really out of touch with our body, or we are really moving through a big wave of emotional release perhaps. And it's really nice after all of that to just shift our focus to, okay, I just had a big experience of some sort. Especially if you're doing like multiple nights of mushrooms or multiple nights at like an ayahuasca retreat or something like that, to just, okay, I'm going to just focus on feeling my body again, getting deeper into this vehicle of mine, right? I'm going to feel what it feels like to, perhaps lift a little weights and feel gravity on my body. I'm going to move. I'm going to feel connected to the earth. I'm going to eat fresh foods that nourish me. I'm going to drink plenty of water and stay hydrated. I'm going to work on sleeping and getting caught up on rest, this kind of a thing, right? This is a great time to do like massage if you like receiving body work. This is a great time, again, to do yoga. This is a great time to generally take care of yourself and feel nourished and supported. I think for a lot of new psychonauts, especially ones who are not prone to the new age kind of yoga hippie thing, this can be something that's often a little bit kind of dismissed, or undervalued, or something that people tend to kind of like just, switch from, I was just, smoking DMT at the peak of an LSD experience and, communing with the white light or having conversations with, 5D entities or whatever, to like, I'm going to drink a bunch of beers and just watch TV, or, just mindlessly scroll the internet, or what have you. Just kind of switch modes into, well, I guess I'm not high anymore, throw that out and just move into this kind of like very kind of basic form of functioning, or trying to maybe soothe a nervous system that's just dealt with like really being, stimulated by a lot of information, right? And so I think it's really important and really valuable to take this time to ground out and to really, spend perhaps days, a couple days at least, at least a day or two, the rest of your journey day, certainly the next day, but I might spend a week, or longer, really slowing down, unplugging from social media, unplugging from the crazy world of the internet, not hanging out with my crazy party friends, just like, breathing deep, doing yoga, journaling, walking, connecting with nature, just feeling my body and feeling nourished by life. I would also, in this aftercare phase, especially if I had an experience where it was kind of confusing or it really broke my paradigm of what I thought, I am, or relationships are, or life on earth is, or what reality is, or what my, sense of the cosmos was, if all of that's been radically rearranged by some experience you had that called these things into question, challenged them, really deeply rattled any of that for you, I think it's also worth spending some time to, at least journal, perhaps think through these things critically, and do some evaluation, some aligning of, what just happened, and do some meaning making, right? And this means not only accessing these deep, far out spiritual experiences, or these intuitions you had, or these kind of moments of, maybe less rational processing of information. I think that's all valuable, but I think you also want to pair that with a healthy amount of critical thinking, of self-inquiry, of challenging some of the ideas and perceptions and experiences you had, possibly of spending some time studying. Get a book about these things, learn about these things, read about spirituality or philosophy or ontology or psychology, and see if perhaps something that you experienced it hasn't been described or explained somewhere that gives you a nice grounding into perhaps a broader way of thinking of yourself, or thinking of life or the world or what have you, that's useful, right? So this is kind of the meaning making part of aftercare, right? So we could even split this up into, if we want to split up this aftercare phase, we could even split that up into two, which would make it a 6-step thing. But I think grounding and meaning making, you kind of want to spend some time doing that. And I think that that's all very important and separate from integration, believe it or not. So let me move to step 5 here, which is integration, and explain what that is in my view, and when that's appropriate, and explain why I think this is different from, just general aftercare of grounding and meaning making. So let's talk integration. Okay, so step 5, as I was just saying, is integration, right? And I want to be clear here. Like I've alluded to, and I'll explain here in a moment, I do think integration is something a little more specific and a little separate from general aftercare protocols, which I think are all lovely and wonderful and very important. And I want to explain when I think integration is useful before I explain kind of in depth what it is. So I think not everyone's going to need to integrate, first of all. Sometimes you don't have an experience that's really useful to integrate. Okay. So, when would you use integration? Integration, I think of as being the go-to process if we've had some sort of a big resource state or big peak experience. So let's say you had a powerful state of some sort, whether that's bliss or oneness or profound joy, or profound compassion, profound love, profound wisdom, feeling okay after a life of not feeling okay, feeling profound, well-being, feeling profound connection to everything around you, feeling oneness, feeling, perhaps like your inner child, like a joyful inner child has come online. So if you have a big positive resource state like this, this is one of the major things I would call upon for integration work. I think if you have perhaps a new mindset that emerges, that might also require integration. So if you have some new insight, you're like, I'm going to think about life in this particular way. Success is like a blah, blah, blah to me, and you have some sort of kind of new personal credo or motto or philosophy that maybe bubbled up in your experience, and you want to lean into this as a filter to live life through moving forward. That might require integration. If you had a powerful experience of just breakthrough of accessing a whole new part of yourself, right? Maybe you've been really repressed and stuck in a very kind of default traditional cultural model, and you just felt yourself free up into some newer, more vivid, more vibrantly alive, very different part of yourself. That might require integration, right? So it's more for these overall, I would say, these big breakthroughs of positive experience, whether that is somatic, whether that's kind of state, whether that's emotion, whether that's perhaps conceptual breakthrough. These are more where I think integration is the appropriate and perhaps even necessary tool. I don't think if you had an experience that was just kind of like feeling groovy and whoa, check it out, I'm high and whoa, this is strange, and having kind of silly, goofy, playful, stoner thoughts, I don't think that's necessarily something to integrate. If you kind of had an experience where there was nothing meaningful that bubbled up for you and you just kind of were in this altered state of consciousness, I don't think there's necessarily anything there to integrate. Maybe, but generally not. If you, let me give some other examples here off the top of my head. If you had a really difficult experience, right? That's the other way these things often go. Again, I don't think that that's necessarily something to integrate either. There might be things to learn about it. You might want to kind of unpack that or, again, run that through some meaning making of quality controlling any thoughts or any core beliefs or, looking at how this fits into a larger pattern, maybe from the past. I don't think that's the same as integration though. You're not integrating that. You're just kind of clarifying something in that case, right? So there are a lot of situations where we have psychedelic experiences where there's not really necessarily anything to integrate, right? So what is integration from my point of view? Let me explain this a little bit more clearly if I can. Then we'll go ahead and wrap the video here and call it good. So from my point of view, integration is kind of it's a congealing, it's a connecting, it's a solidification of what might have been or what might be kind of distinct distinct aspects, that's the word, or pieces or parts of your experience, right? So integration really is about the wiring up of your neurology, of your body and your nervous system and your different aspects of your nervous system to connect together to function as a coherent whole, essentially, right? And so, I think of I don't know if you're familiar, if any of you out there are familiar with Dan Siegel, who's a well-known kind of neuroscientist and therapist, or like the work of coherence therapy and therapeutic memory reconsolidation. This is generally what we think of when we say the word, integration. Like Dan Siegel uses the word a lot. What he means in this case is different aspects of the nervous system working in harmony and balance in wholeness, right? So an obvious example would be, say, your left brain and your right brain, So let's say you're normally strongly one or the other. You're strongly right brain, strongly left brain. Perhaps you're operating out of balance, right? Maybe you have an experience on a psychedelic where that's working in perfect harmony, where your creative, intuitive, felt sense, non-linear processing is working in perfect alignment with your logical, rational brain. And that's all working beautifully as one whole system, right? That would be a left brain, right brain integration. Another example that he gives would be the different layers of the brain between the cortex and the mammalian brain and the reptilian or the brain stem, and having all of those systems vertically work together as an integrated whole rather than having different drives and different needs and different focuses. And, for example, an unintegrated vertical brain would be something like, my reptilian brain is in fight or flight, but my prefrontal cortex knows that I'm safe and this is a fine moment where there's no issues, right? So if there's a disconnect there between the two, that's a lack of integration. There are other ways of thinking about this: conscious mind, unconscious mind integration, spiritual self, and kind of default mode self integration. There are these different aspects of our nervous system that we don't want to be swinging wildly from one end to the other or only in one part of our nervous system. We want to wire them up, right? So how does this all apply to psychedelic work, right? So let's say you have this, again, this profound resource state. You have a profound experience of oneness and you feel the love of the cosmos pouring through you, and your body is filled with this sense of profound wonder and awe and beauty and love, to the point that there are no words to describe it. You're moved to tears. It is the realest thing you've ever fucking experienced. And it's super familiar, but brand new at the same time. And you want to be more in touch with this new state that feels so familiar and so profound, right? So all of a sudden you've had this breakthrough experience of this profound new state that you want to have in your life. Then the work of integration is largely about connecting back to that and connecting that neural path that's been created, right? So not letting it fade away and kind of atrophy by not using it, or just letting it be one of these experiences like your dreams you have every night that just kind of fade off into the distance over time. But instead, you wire that up so you re-access that profound state and connect that back into your sense of self, your sense of relationship, your sense of how you want to move through the world, your sense of how you view whatever it is, your parents or your career or what have you, right? And so integration is really this action, this process of taking these different aspects and connecting the dots, and neurologically in a way that's robust, that's lasting and stays, right? And so this is often misunderstood, I think. And I think, again, we get this kind of discussion, of the term, the use of the term just very broadly to mean, let's have a group chat where we talk about our weird things we saw in our psychedelic sessions, or let's, let's integrate by journaling, what are my thoughts and my emotions about what just happened. All that's really beautiful, but I'm not really convinced that any of that really deeply wires in these states as parts of our nervous system that we can access over and over again, right? And so to me, that's what integration is. It's a very specific thing, and it's not always warranted. Again, there are times where you have experiences that are kind of neither here nor there. There's no really clear, fruitful content from the experience. It was just kind of an experience you had, in the same way that some dreams you have aren't good dreams and aren't nightmares. They're just kind of interesting. You just kind of like, your brain floats through a strange experience, and then you wake up and it was neither here nor there, right? And so this is how I think we should be thinking about integration. It's much more specific, and it's something that if you've had these big experiences and then you don't integrate them, it can create this kind of weird parts conflict in your psyche, where there's part of you that knows that everything's one, and God is love, and life is beautiful, and life on earth is precious and rare and fleeting, and whatever the big lesson was from the psychedelic, right? So you have this part of you that knows that, and knows the emotions and the insights and the states and the bliss and this whole experience. And then maybe the rest of your personality doesn't fit with that at all. Maybe the rest of you is jaded and bored and, lost and doesn't know what to do. And, kind of like tends to be at odds with people relationally, right? And so you have these very different aspects of your personality sometimes that, if it's not integrated, it can create conflicts, right? And you don't know which is true, or you don't know which one to believe, or you don't know which direction to go in with certain things, or you kind of express one thing and then express a whole other thing. And what comes out of your personality, comes out of your behavior, comes out of your psyche, comes out of your emotions, comes through your relationships to other people, is a confusing mixed message, essentially. And so this is why we want to integrate this stuff, because it changes you, and you want these positive changes in you to be coherent through your system, right? So this is why integration is so important, so that you are operating as a solid, whole, coherent system of information that's functioning at ideally a higher and higher level, right? So that's my thoughts about integration. I've kind of got rambling on. As you can see, this is something I'm really passionate about, and something I feel like there's a lot to talk about there. So I'm going to pause that conversation for now with you guys. we'll wrap the video, and we'll call it done. Okay, so just to summarize really quick, the 5-step model that I'm proposing as kind of a better model for setting yourself up for success with psychedelics instead of just prep, journey, integration. It's actually more like prep, logistics, journey, aftercare, and integration when necessary. If any of this is unclear, please feel free to leave me comments down below. I would really appreciate any feedback about this. What do you think about this? Does this make sense? Does this line up with your own experience? Do you see places where perhaps you didn't follow this protocol and it kind of worked against you? Let me know. I'd be curious. So this is not a fully fleshed out model, but more or less, I think this is a workable model that you can follow right away. And this to me makes much more sense and helps to organize what it is that we need to do to have a really good full arc of our journey experience. So that's my thoughts for the day. And if you've made it through the whole video, much love to you all. Deeply appreciated as always. I've got tons more content on the way. And really where I'm at right now with the channel is I've got, I'm building these courses I'm going to be launching here for you guys shortly. And so I'm kind of holding off on a lot of content because I want to share about it as relevant to these courses. So you'll probably see a bunch of videos from me that might seem a little kind of hodgepodge in the short term. And then hopefully here, this will all start to line up and make more sense. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you all. I hope you're doing well out there. I hope the medicine's treating you well. And if you have any questions about any of this, don't be a stranger. Please do leave a comment down below or send me an email at the email link down below. I'm always happy to just reply to people, kind of be a resource for you, send you in the right direction, give you my thoughts free of charge. And if you do want to talk to me about coaching, of course, you want to work with me more closely on support around this, sitting you, that kind of a thing, get in touch with me. I'm happy to talk with you about it. Much love, take care, and I'll talk to you guys soon.